Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. I'm on a little bit of a Barbarian kick today because I figured I might as well tackle Berserk as well. Berserk is an interesting ability in the combat skills tree, and quite honestly, Berserk is one of those abilities that I think a lot of people have always wanted to build, but cannot quite get it to work just right. And there are a lot of reasons why Berserk does not quite work the way that you might want it to. And we're going to go over those things together today, and we're going to talk about, why Berserk is a little bit of an odd ability, what potentially you could do to fix it, and how they've changed Berserk a little bit in 2.4, which they have done. I'm also joined here by Mr. NiNi, who I'm sure is going to hide behind my head the entire time because he doesn't like to be seen by the camera. No, he doesn't want to be seen by the camera. He doesn't want to be. I like messing with him. So Berserk is a ability that converts all of your damage, your physical damage, into magic damage. Now, magic damage is one of the most powerful types of damage in Diablo 2. And you might be asking, well, why is that? Why isn't fire the most of better? Why isn't lightning the best? Why isn't ice the best? Why isn't physical damage the best? Well, the answer is because most monsters have resistances to those. But most monsters actually do not have any resistance to magical damage whatsoever, which makes magical damage one of the strongest types of damage in Diablo 2, which is why characters like the Bone Spear and Bone Spirit Necromancers, the Hammered In, and also the Berserk Barbarian can be among the hardest hitting and strongest characters in the game. The problem with Berserk is that Berserk, well, has some very big downsides to it. And as we go over it together, I think you'll start to understand what those downsides are. So right off the bat, let's just read the ability. A powerful but reckless attack that increases damage and attack rating, but decreases defense. Maximum level reached. Mana cost 4, so it's not bad on mana. Current skill level is level 29, base 20, attack rating 520%, a pretty massive attack rating bonus. And let's go ahead and put the skill on here so we can actually see it. So you can see I have a pretty massive attack rating of 9,560 without really trying to make my attack rating go extremely high. I could also potentially put in a mastery. So right now I am using a Immortal King's Stone Crusher. So let's go ahead and put in Mace Mastery, which is going to beef that up even higher to 13,384. And then when we take a look at the ability, we also have some other things. We have magic damage, so plus 570% magic damage. So a huge bonus to the amount of magic damage that we put out with this ability. Because Berserk converts its damage after, not before, after all the calculations take place, you actually do get pretty nice bonuses in damage by increasing your physical damage, because once your physical damage has been calculated, that's when Berserk goes through the process of converting all of that physical damage into magical damage. So we can also get effects from the synergies. Now, one of the things that they changed with Berserk, and the reason why they changed it was because it made no sense. In original 2.3, or before, Berserk had a synergy with Shout, which was the defense increase ability. Okay? Berserk takes away all your defense. So it never made any sense for Berserk to have a synergy with an ability that was increasing your defense when, you were, of course, losing all your defense by using the ability. So they changed the Shout synergy. It is no longer Shout, and instead it is Howl and Battle Orders. So we're going to beef those two up as well. We're going to beef up Howl, and we're going to beef up Battle Orders. So we're going to max out Battle Orders, and then we have basically what is known as the maximum Berserk ability, which is attack rating 520%, magic damage bonus 970% magic damage with a duration of 1.2 seconds. Now you might be asking what the duration is. Well, the duration, I'm pretty sure, is actually the defense reduction. And we can actually take a look at this. So as you can see there, my defense goes from 2,393 to 0. Now, the very large downside about this ability, even though it seems amazing, even though it hits like a literal Mack truck, and most monsters in the game have absolutely no way of resisting the damage, the issue lies in something else. The issue lies in the fact that you cannot effectively restore your life. So let me go ahead and get my life up as high as possible, and I'm going to show you what it's like to be a barbarian who is using Berserk who cannot restore his own HP. Now, because Berserk converts all, and I don't just mean some, all of your damage from physical to magical, you cannot steal life, you cannot block attacks, because of course you have no defense, and you also cannot use abilities like life tap. And what this means is that you end up dying. There are ways around this, but I wanted to die because I wanted to show you guys that despite me being able to kill and deal damage very effectively with this ability, staying alive with this ability is an absolute pain in the butt for multiple reasons. You would think that the defense negative was enough. You would think that them completely removing all of your defensive capability away was enough, but it's not enough. Because of the way that the ability works, because it converts every ounce of physical damage that you have into elemental damage, into the magical damage, you cannot steal life. So any form of life steal that you may have, whether it be from a ring or from a set bonus, or even from life tap itself, will not work with Berserk. And the reason for this is because there is no physical damage to convert. This also means that you will have no mana steal either. So mana steal is also an issue. Because, of course, mana steal is, again, something that requires physical damage. If you don't have any physical damage, you don't have any mana steal. Which means that when you're using an ability like Berserk, you usually have to use something else. And this is really one of the biggest downsides about Berserk, is just its complete inability to dish out any physical damage. And you might think that, like, that's a good thing. You know, their sorceresses don't do physical damage. They deal ice and fire and cold. And there are certain Amazons that don't do physical damage. There are certain paladins that don't do physical damage. You know, there are a lot of characters that have ways of killing monsters that don't have any kind of physical presence. And because they don't have any kind of physical presence, they can usually do fairly well. The main issue with this is that because the barbarian kind of relies on lifesteal to heal himself, it becomes an issue. Berserk also removes all your defense from your character, which again means that you're going to be hit more often than you would normally, and the more often you get hit, the more often you're going to need to restore your health. Now, there are certain ways that you can restore your health as a Berserk barbarian. Number one, of course, is potions. You can, of course, still drink as many potions as you would like. Number two is life after kill. So there are quite a few items in the game that have an effect called a life after kill on it, and I don't think I have one on me right this second. But basically what they do is that when you successfully make a kill on a target, that target will provide you with a small bonus of health. So you may have, you know, like plus 10 life after each kill, and every time you kill something, you will get 10 more HP on your orb. This is not super effective unless you can kill extremely fast. And because Berserk is a single target ability, the chances of you killing fast enough to make life after kill good enough for this kind of a build is probably next to nothing. Another way that you could potentially deal with this is a massive amount of regeneration or replenish life. Now, there are quite a large number of items in the game that have a large amount of replenished life on them, and if you had enough replenished life with a large enough HP pool, you could potentially have a massive regeneration effect going on, which could counter the loss of defense and also the lack of any kind of lifesteal with the ability. Another way that you could go to help out your Berserk build to make it a little more tanky than not tanky at all is to add a shield to the mix. So adding a shield would give you the ability to have a 75% block chance. Having a block chance would be a way for you to avoid damage to your HP bar that you would otherwise take. Your Berserk is not going to ruin your block chance, only your defense. Which means that if you have a 75% block chance while using Berserk, you could theoretically still stave off the majority of the evil hits in the game. Now, of course, defense is not the only modifier that matters. You know, there is also resistances and absorption and things like that that can help you out as well. But when you're going up against, you know, like, say, Hell Cows, which are almost entirely physical damage, and you have 0 defense while fighting them, it can be pretty detrimental. A lot of people will tell you that defense is one of the least important stats in Diablo 2, and I couldn't disagree more. Because when you have 0 defense, you start to realize just how important defense is. Now, I don't necessarily think that you need to go out of your way on most characters to get the highest amount of defense possible, don't get me wrong, but when you have none, when you have relatively no defense and you find yourself in a melee situation, which is exactly what the Berserk skill is a melee ability. When you find yourself in a melee situation with 0 defense, it can be deadly. It can be really freaking deadly, especially when the monsters are hitting really hard. Another way that you could possibly mitigate the damage is to mitigate the damage with damage reduction. So most hits, most attacks, most melee attacks, most ranged attacks that come in and check against your defense are going to be physical damage. There are very few abilities in the game that are physical attack rating checks that are not physical damage. Some of them have other elemental components as well, but for the most part, melee and ranged abilities are physical damage attacks. And because of this, if you were to build up at least 50% physical damage reduction, you could mitigate a large percentage of the incoming damage that you would potentially take by having 0 defense. So, in recap, how can you mitigate the Berserk problem? So no lifesteal, no defense. Those are our downsides, okay? How do we mitigate this? High amounts of physical damage reduction. 50% physical damage reduction or even higher. And you might be asking me, why am I saying higher than 50% when 50% is the cap? Because you would be overprotecting yourself versus curses like amplified damage and also decrepify. So Decrepify reduces your physical resistance by 50%. So as soon as you are cursed with Decrepify, your 50% damage reduction just goes back down to 0. And Amplify damage is a negative 100% physical damage reduction. And as soon as you are cursed with Amplify damage, again, your physical damage reduction is now at negative 50%. And you are a 0 defense Barbarian who's getting beat the crap out of. These are the things that you have to consider when you're building a Berserk Barbarian. Also, you generally kind of want something else to go along with it. I hate to say this because usually when you build an ability, especially if the ability costs you 20 points, and then you also have to put another 20 and 40 points into other abilities, and you've spent 60 points on this ability, that you probably wouldn't want to build something else alongside of it. But Berserk is one of those abilities that you probably do want something else to go with it. I don't know what exactly that would be. It could be Whirlwind, it could be Concentrate, it could be Stun, it could be a lot of different abilities that may not be the best abilities. It really depends on what you are specifically looking to do with your Barbarian. You could potentially even use something like Grimward to help prevent the monsters from even hitting you in the first place. It's all kind of up to you, and that's kind of the really odd mystery, I think, of Berserk, is that it works, it hits really hard. It's absolutely excellent for taking on physical immunes, by the way. If you are a Barbarian and you've ever had issues with physical immunes, even just 1 point in Berserk can sometimes be enough to take out physical immunes, because even just at 1 point, you'll see that it still converts 225% of your physical damage to magical damage, which means that pretty much everything that you've got, for the most part, is going to be magical damage every time you hit a target with Berserk. You might not have the attack rating that you need, or you might not have, specifically the abilities that you might want. But as you can see, I'm dealing out 2,301 to 3,328 Berserk magical damage with only the 1 point. Only 1 point in Berserk, which is not bad at all. And this is something that you might want to consider is that as you look at ways to get rid of physical immunes, Berserk is definitely an interesting choice. It's not something that you're going to want to spam on a regular basis, don't get me wrong, but as a one-off, finishing off a physical immune target, it can certainly be helpful to have at least 1 point in Berserk. Also, because Berserk shares a synergy with battle orders, which is right here, something that a lot of barbarians build, most barbarians are probably going to have battle orders in their repertoire, which means that your 1 point in Berserk is going to be the equivalent of about 495% magical damage, give or take, depending on what your plus to skills are. And it makes it a very interesting choice for a lot of builds, especially if you're going down for Whirlwind anyway, because if you are going down for Whirlwind anyway, it's only 1 point. Not bad at all. I hope that I've given you guys a little bit of insight on the way that Berserk works, on perhaps what you could potentially use it for. Maybe you've always wanted to build Berserk, but you never really quite understood, what particularly you could do with Berserk to make it work out. Maybe you just never really could get past the lifesteal problem or the inherent negative defense problem. And I hope I've given you a little bit of an idea of what potentially you could do. As always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.